All right, you guys, we're back at the Sefcik Show. Special guest in-house, traveling from very far away, actually, Jeff Curran. I'm going to talk more about him in a second, but it's a pleasure to have him in studio today. Before we start the show, big shout out to Doug behind camera, our producer of Lever Dreams. This show doesn't happen without Doug, so we appreciate you, brother. Thanks for all that you do for the show to make this happen. We also have to give a shout out to our sponsors, Tropical Smoothie Cafe of Mount Airy. Thank you for all you do to make the show happen. And also California Tortilla. Thank you as well for making this show happen. If you guys are interested in a free meal or a free shake, hit us up on The Sefcik Show. You can find us on all social media, YouTube, all the platforms. Hit us up and say, hey, Kyle, I want to know how to get a free shake or a free meal to these sponsors, and we'll hook you up. As always, you guys, we're going to pray into the show, and then we're going to have an awesome time with Jeff Curran here. Lord God, just thank you for allowing the show to happen. Thank you for our brother Jeff Curran to be in-house today, and just thank you for all he's done for the association and just what he's done for the art of MMA and what he's done for us younger people to just look up to a guy in the community to just set the example of what we should be doing in our business, in our association. And I just pray over all the audience today that are listening in, that they listen to a good show today and whatever is going on in their lives, that you help them find a way to keep finding that healing and that joy, love, and peace in their lives. Thank you for our producer Doug as well to help make this show possible, and just bless the rest of this day. Amen.
Amen.
All right, Jeff Curran. Many of you know that name or him because of his MMA career. That's the main thing I would like to guess that most of the audience knows you by, Jeff. He has fought in things like UFC, WEC, Pride, Bellator, all the biggest names in the MMA world. And here's the thing that I respect most. He has fought over 50, just on paper, over 50 MMA fights, but overall, I'm pretty sure he'll share more. It's over 100 at this point. He's been in the game for a long time, and I'll share this. When I got into it at 17, 18 years old, he was one of the names early on that I was seeing on TV, hearing about, watching as a young guy getting into this, and he really is an OG, an original gangster of this sport, and a legend. I told some buddies the other day, like, oh yeah, my buddy Jeff of the association's coming through, and they're like, oh, that's a legend, and it's the truth. So we're going to be talking more with Jeff all about his past, what's coming up for him, and all that stuff. But Jeff, just thank you for being on the show today.
Yeah, my pleasure. I like your energy. I've gotten to meet you a few times, and anything I can do to help what your mission is and what you're out to try to accomplish in your life, I'm happy to do it. Especially coming through town. So I appreciate the invite, and just happy to talk to everybody, and hopefully get my story out there a little bit.
Yes, sir. So you currently live in Illinois,
sir, and
you have your gym there.
Yep. Team
Curran is what it's known as, but is this Curran what's the name of the actual school in Illinois?
The name of the school is Curran Jiu-Jitsu Academy. We're going on our 26th year. I've changed names a few times. We started out, I think it was like All Range Combat Center, and then people thought it was a shooting range, and then I switched it to All Range Martial Arts Academy, and then we switched it to Lynx Academy, and then I switched to Curran Martial Arts, and then I switched it to Team Curran MMA, and then I just kind of like after COVID wanted to break away from the MMA route. MMA, like my corporate name is still Team Curran MMA, but the MMA
focus, emphasis, kind of.
Yeah, I didn't want to steer people away, and I wasn't planning on training a lot of fighters anymore, so I wanted to start giving jiu-jitsu the real credit, because jiu-jitsu is why I'm where I am today, and it wasn't getting enough love. I love the sport of MMA like nothing else, but at the end of the day, it's just a sport. It's not a style in itself, and jiu-jitsu is the reason for that sport. Yes, for not just for me, but for the sport in general, to Americans and to the world. When the Gracie family started the 1993 came and had UFC 1, it's like, if that never happened, my life never happened.
Wow.
I would probably still be doing flooring,
And, when you for those of you that haven't maybe watched his fights and stuff, if you look up his fights, you were fighting so young, man. Like you really were, before like even the UFC was known about, you were already fighting. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are still this day just kind of tuning into UFC just the last 10, 15 years. But you, before the UFC even really popped off and had even a big name, you were in literally these fights. What got you into, like, how were you knowledgeable enough and involved in the MMA world or the fight world to know to get into these things at 14 years old, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at 14 years old? And we're looking at this, how many years ago?
I'm 46, going to be 46 in a few months, so it's been a while.
28, 30 years ago.
Yeah, 30
You were getting into Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah. So how did you get into it? How did you find out about this amazing art of Jiu-Jitsu?
It's a really good story. I don't know if you've met Adam Miller in the association. He teaches. Adam is a 4th degree under Professor Sauer, and he's down in Gracie, Kentucky now. But he was, one of the founding guys of my school. I was not 14. Like, I turned 15 a few months later.
Got it.
So, it's nice to say I started when I was 14.
You did.
I was only shortly there for a little bit, but I was training karate like all the time. And my friend Tom, who I trained karate with every day after school, he ended up getting giving this lower level belt like a bloody nose, and our master kicked him out of the academy and said he's no longer allowed back, and he lost his free tuition, which was a scholarship program he qualified for with good grades. And then he was a wrestler, and he started looking around. And he said, hey, you got to come check out this ground fighting class on Wednesday nights. And Adam Miller was a black belt in Hapkido and training judo at this other school. And he was kind of he went to a Hicks and Gracie seminar and learned all these moves, and he sketched up all the positions. Wow. Because no one had cameras back then, at least nothing instant. And he'd sketch up all these images and made photocopies. So wow. I went to this class, and he's, had just started this Wednesday night thing. So he kind of, that was my first class, and I walked in, and I was just sold. And wow. Adam has been with me since. I wouldn't even say he's been with me. We've been together since. And I was the first wedding he ever officiated. He's a pastor.
Awesome.
And, he was going through his Bible school. He was working as many jobs as possible. He had 2 kids. I think his wife was in medical school. He was just training a couple days a week at that time, 1-2 days a week. So I didn't have him every single day. And I had to go out and take the reins and start going and learning stuff. So I started going around to seminars, and I bought every martial arts magazine you could imagine. Black Belt Magazine, I don't even know the names of some of them, Inside Kung Fu, and just looking for anything possible that had anything to do with this jiu-jitsu stuff. And I found a seminar that Megaton was holding, Wellington Diaz, known as Megaton. He was holding a seminar in Indiana. So I got my friend's dad to agree to drive us there. It's a couple hours from our house. And I went in, and the conditioning was off the charts. I couldn't believe it. The guy didn't speak good English, and all he did was really kick our butts. He just tapped everybody in the line repeatedly, him and his purple belt. And I was like, oh, this is it. I didn't learn anything, but it was I saw how crazy, talented he was, and he gave me a business card. And my friend Tom and I took a trip out to Arizona, stayed with his family in Mesa. We'd pay 99 cents to take a red line bus that would take hours to get us all the way through Apache Junction and Phoenix and all the way to Glendale where his gym was. And we'd go there and train, and then we'd go back. And I did that trip one time with him, and then after that his parents didn't really want him traveling because he was a grade younger than I was. And I kind of had the freedom. I had a little bit of a sketchy home life there. So I just started going. And throughout my high school life, I took about 25 to 30 trips to Arizona to train with Megaton, and wow. I had a room there, and I kept all my stuff there. And unfortunately, when I was 17, we had a little bit of a falling out, and I had to start looking for something local. Carlson Gracie Jr. opened an academy in downtown Chicago, so I joined that team, and wow. Still to this day, I'm good friends with a lot of the guys that came up during that time. But shortly after that, about a year after that, Junior kind of up and left and went to Ohio, and it wasn't the time where everybody had cell phones, so nobody knew where he was. And I was like, man, I got to find a black belt that I could be under. And Junior and I are still great. I love him. He's one of my favorite people. I still reference a lot of things that I learned from him back then because they really settle in. But I went to this Thai boxing seminar with Frank Cucci when he came to Chicago one time, and he said, "Man, you got to meet. You're the jiu-jitsu guy, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Man, you're a blue belt?" I said, "Yeah, I'm a blue belt." He's like, "Man, you got to meet Pedro Sauer." And I flew out to Virginia Beach thinking I was gonna take a private with Pedro and beat him up, kick his butt and show him what it's all about. Like, this guy's not a Gracie. He's not Megaton. There's no way. And yeah, so that was it. And I took a private with him every day for like a week. And I remember knocking on his door, and I'm like, "Professor," or Pedro. And he answers the door. I'm like, "You want to go surf?" He's like, "No, but I'll go get lunch. I don't surf anymore." I'm like, "Okay, let's go get lunch." And I had to drive him to school, took a private, and then he just kind of beat me up. I asked him to teach me to roll with me instead of teach me stuff. So he taught me a pretty good lesson really quick, tapping me a lot. And then he was like, put his arm around me. He's like, "Are you ready to learn now?" I'm like, "I'm ready."
Wow.
So I went back to white belt, and I trained there until I learned the curriculum, and then I got every belt from him from that point forward, and I never looked back.
And just curriculum-wise, Professor Sauer has the best curriculum. White to blue, blue to purple, purple to brown, brown to black, something we take very serious in the association, as you know, and our buddy Alex here knows as well. And we're going to talk more about this in a second, but I want to ask you, why do you think jiu-jitsu is the greatest martial art there is? What makes it so great?
Well, there's a lot to that, but I think from an effective standpoint, jiu-jitsu is the only style that can teach somebody to survive an assault. And doesn't mean win, doesn't mean you're gonna, some small little girl is gonna beat up some big guy, but it can give her the tools to defend and escape, or weather the storm and protect themselves long enough till somebody can intervene and help. So that right there is just enough. Being a smaller guy and walking around at like 135, 140 most of my life, I was just always the smaller person, and without jiu-jitsu, my career would have been a totally different ball game because I was never just a aggressor and like take charge and go dominate type style. I really embodied what jiu-jitsu was teaching me from the grassroots. But I think beyond that, it's just a community. Like, when you're holding targets for each other, like in traditional martial arts, or kick shields, or you're hitting a bag, or you're hitting mitts, and you don't get the same bonding experience as you do when you're grabbing each other and you're grappling and you're in these, like, it's almost intimate in a weird way. It's like, no other thing in life would people be comfortable doing some of the positions we end up in jiu-jitsu with a stranger, but for some reason jiu-jitsu makes it all okay.
Totally.
So I think you just create this sense of community and connection with people just naturally from the connection that you make. So yeah, I mean, that's how I see jiu-jitsu. It's just like not only just the effectiveness of it, but what it does for you watch somebody just weak and frail, and then they come up the line, and next thing you know, they're just like this confident person who can, like, is so totally unassuming, but they'll strangle you 100 different ways if you let them, And to your point about Pedro Sauer's curriculum, there's not many. I mean, you see it with the old school guys. They are very loyal to their upbringings.
Yes.
One thing that I learned just without pressure from Pedro was the loyalty that he has to Grandmaster Elio, even since he's passed, to pay it forward with his old school self-defense and his original lessons and things like that. Not many people are still doing that. The Valente brothers and a lot of guys do, but Pedro, he really, really, like, that was his promise to Grandmaster Elio. He's like, I'm going to make sure my black belts have what you are offering. Everything else on top of that, modern stuff, of course, it's good to progress and evolve everything. Technology, everything evolves. But the old school self-defense, those roots, man, those are important. That's like a history lesson. So I put it like this to my people. You've got your foundation, which is your start, and then you've got your innovation, which is your middle. Then you have your preservation, which is, the black belt time, where by the time you're a black belt, you need to be able to preserve the history and the tradition of the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that we do.
True.
So that's kind of I see it.
So, no, I mean, 100% know exactly what you're talking about, and you're dead on with it. So another thing I love about it, like you were talking about how like you were, this young guy going to train with Professor, and you're going to put it on him, and obviously Professor did the opposite. He put it on you, right, as he does to everybody.
Very nicely, but he
very
did.
nicely and humbly. It makes you feel like you know nothing. I mean, that's what we can all, I guess, vouch for at one point in our lives training with Professor. You can't fake fighting. You can't fake jiu-jitsu. And it's so humbling. And especially this is what I love about what the Gracies did and what Professor did is they came here to America and they proved that their art worked. They were able to prove it. We're just some guys that they trained with, but how many people came up to them and just challenged them? And we know there's fights online about Professor fighting people that challenge them, like Mr. Utah and all these others. But it's like there's no greater way, I believe, to prove to somebody that the art works than to truly just do it with them and show them. And we do it. I know you do this probably day in and day out at your gyms when you get new guys coming in to test it, and you just it makes you make it look like it's just the easiest thing, and you're submitting them and they're just wondering, how is this happening?
Right.
And they humble themselves real fast, and they either leave and never come back, and they always remember that, or they say, I never want this to be me. I need to train. I need to humble myself. I need to check my ego, and I need to train in this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Why do you think most men still aren't training in this art? I truly believe every single man, especially, and woman, that's not like, but why do you think there's a lot of men that still won't even come in to check it out when they know they're watching UFC every night and they're yelling at the screen, but they won't come and train? Why?
The saying is like the white belt is the hardest belt to get in jiu-jitsu because that takes you making the decision to start, and you step in and not everyone's a white belt in jiu-jitsu. You're only a white belt in jiu-jitsu when you start, right? So, like, that big step to go, I'm going to get on this mat and see what happens. By nature, we're prideful and egotistical, and we protect our reputation. We don't want, especially as guys, like, nobody wants to be, the big, strong guy coming in and getting tapped out by the skinny little guy, and that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. Now, the ones that do, they get it and they become really good advocates for jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
But that's hard to tell people. Like, I'll talk to people that, I don't want to come in and get my ass kicked. Like, why not? Like, and who thinks that's not how it's going to happen?
Correct.
But you're going to come in, you're going to be challenged, and you're going to learn how to not let that happen. But it's very hard to get a point across to people. I mean, I had this thing where, like, we'd be out, and every time we'd be out somewhere, like my wife and I, or we'd be with some of my students, and all these guys that knew me that didn't train, they'd be like, man, I'm starting Monday. How do I get started Monday? And I'm like, I'm going to start a $10 Monday class. Like, you start by buying this card for $10 and coming in Monday. I'm like, I'd be a rich man. I'd sell so many of these I'm starting Monday cards, but nobody would come.
No one ever shows up.
Yeah, they don't come.
Any school owner listening right now, you know exactly what Jeff's talking about. Most of the people that say, I'll be there, they never show up. And that's why I asked that. It's just like, it's just, man, we just encourage so many people, no matter what you think of, like, to put your ego and pride aside and just start and see how it really transform your lives for in so many ways. Like you were talking about earlier, Jeff, what it just does for you as a person, what it truly teaches you about yourself and how to treat others. And let's be honest, you can train with somebody the first time they show in, and you probably could tell that person a lot about themselves. If you trained with somebody for like a minute and just rolled with them, and you didn't know who they are, I guarantee you could tell that after rolling with them, you can sense and feel what kind of lifestyle they live or something. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, like, you just I always tell this story when it comes to fighting, about that. I think it was an article I read about Hickson, and it was like, how do you prepare for like a 16-man Grand Prix or an 8-man tournament? And he was like, it's easy, if I'm standing across the ring from a bear, I'm going to run, and if I'm going to stand across the ring from an alligator, I'm going to climb a tree. It was somewhere along that context. You learn about people when you see what they like. You can feel like, oh, this person isn't very physical. They've never done this. They've never done that. This person's shy and introverted, or this person's outgoing and this and that. You can pick up on little traits really quickly that you can tell a lot about that person right out of the gate.
Yes.
What I like being able to do now, like, and I'm sure you're there, is like it used to be me having to grab every new student and show them the beauty and finesse of jiu-jitsu, and now I can sit back and let my blue belts do it.
Yes.
You know, like my students can take the new guy and just play with them and show them, like, how long you been training? I've been training a year. It's like, what? You know, it's like, or 2 years, and it's like, only 2 years and you're that good.
Yeah.
You know, and it's pretty powerful for them to become the voice of what jiu-jitsu is capable of doing, because everybody expects, you know, the black belt or the owner of the school to be able to be good, but it's when the students are reproducing that same or producing the same result, that's when I think it's got the most powerful. And so that's when you get that big school and a lot of different, you know, black belts and blue belts and there's tons of different variety of skill sets. That's when it's the most impressive. You know, you get that. Like, I got this girl, April. She's a little girl. I want to say she's probably 100 pounds.
Wow.
Super technical. And she, you know, if she has a hard time with some of the bigger, stronger, advanced guys, because they're just bigger and stronger and they know everything she knows. But, like, when she takes, like, people closer to her size that don't know jiu-jitsu, I mean, watch out. She knows what's up, you know. And I know a lot of people like that, whether they're male, female, it doesn't matter. They're just, their technique shines, and you know, that to me is really impressive.
Yeah, and I think, like, especially the smaller students that we have, they're some of the best examples in our gym to greet new people and get them involved, because they're great examples of what technique and jiu-jitsu is all about in the first place, right?
Yes.
A smaller individual to manipulate and beat and survive against a larger, as you were saying.
Well, if any of the viewers are on that, like, fence of deciding to start jiu-jitsu, I would just say, like, get over your fears, you know, step over that line and just try it. I mean, and what's the right academy for you? That might take a couple times to feel it out and find it, but you might know right away. You know, you might walk in and go, this is the place. I can feel it. And a really well-ran school should have that vibe where you walk in and you feel welcomed. You're going to be kind of taken through the process, and you're going to feel comfortable, and you're not going to feel like you're just on this chopping block ready to get your butt kicked.
So there's two more things, topics I want to cover. One, what do you most remember in your MMA career? And I want to bring this up because you've had so many fights. I mean, to think about, like, as I went pro in MMA, I've had 12 total MMA fights. And to me, it's like, man, that felt like that was an eternity. That was a lot of fights. You have fought over 50, and those are just the ones documented online.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how often you were fighting and putting yourself out there and preparing and cutting weight and training and getting in the ring. And here's the thing. You've won most of your fights. And even the losses, they went the distance most of the time. These are some serious fights. You know what I'm saying? So tell us a little bit what you remember most to the MMA fans, especially, like, that have truly watched you. We've all watched. If you've been watching for years, you've watched Jeff fight. And he really, his fights were fun to watch, man. Like, they really were. And I remember just being young, 17, 18 years old, and watching, like, you and Faber. And was it Matt Serra? Like, who did you fight?
I fought Matt in UFC
like,
46.
These names. I mean, you were top, man. You were the top, one of the top fighters in the world at one point. What do you like take from that career of all those fights? When I ask that question, I know it's general, but what's something you can share just about that career, like maybe lessons, or maybe like things you loved most about it, or what you didn't love most about it, or can you just share a little bit about the MMA career with us?
Yeah. First off, I miss it like every day, because I do and I don't. It's like a love-hate. I don't miss cutting weight, obviously. Like, that's the worst. And you know, that's the hard part. Like the guys that are starting Monday, that's like my diet, right? It's gonna start Monday, and if I had a $10 for every time I said that, then I'd be a pretty rich man. But part of that, part of that is just like those are the bad parts. Like cutting weight, that process, I used to love it. You feel like that was when your body just like was ready to be like optimized. But some of the weight cuts as I got older was that most people get older and go up in weight. I got older and went down in weight.
Wow. Okay.
Because the weight classes that I should have been at most of my life were becoming more prominent. Whereas when I was starting, 55 was as light as you got. I would fight fights at like 65. I fought a guy one time, and he wasn't very good at all, but I was in the locker room, and the promoter's like, you want to fight him? And I'm like, sure. He's like, yeah, he weighed in like 185, but you'll be good. You got a lot more experience. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll fight that guy. Like that weight would have made a difference. He was probably 50 pounds heavier than me. I won the fight, and it was kind of a boring fight, and he quit pretty early because I was hitting him pretty hard. But I think with my career, there was something about it that just like it owned me, and I felt like that was where I was always meant to be. Coming through my my personal life growing up and some of the challenges I guess you go through in a life like that, coming from a very small town called Wonder Lake, kind of on the Wisconsin border of Northwest Illinois, I had these like, I wanted out so bad. Like, I got to get away from this town. Like, the alcoholism in my family, my dad passed away when I was 18. There was like more mental, but some physical abuse. Like, I've been not from my dad. Like, my dad was great. My dad and my mom had their issues. My dad could have been a better husband for sure, but he was a great dad. And but my desire to escape was so big that like when I found jiu-jitsu and I saw Hoist fight, and I just saw him up there, I'm like, and he said, you see them coming from Brazil, and seeing like most people in Brazil that were doing jiu-jitsu at that time. I don't know what their financial status was as far as the Gracie family went then, but I do know that they were not always well-to-do. They fought through, and they worked hard, and I saw that. I'm like, man, fighting got him out of Brazil. That's kind of like one thing that went in my head, and I was like, maybe fighting can get me out of my town.
Wow. And
plus, I feel like I was so used to so much like screaming and yelling and fighting and chaos that like when I fought and it became a physical chaos, I thrived in it. Wow. And I welcomed it, and I was kind of addicted to it, and I just became really in love with the way that jiu-jitsu can take all of this noise of life and calm it down.
Wow.
And when I fought, it was like, didn't matter if the crowd was screaming, if people were yelling at me, if they wanted me to win or lose, or if I'm standing across the ring or the cage from some dude who's like 20 pounds heavier, 30 pounds heavier, all jacked up, hyped up, ready to kill me. And I got my friends, and they're like, dude, why aren't you hyped up like that? You got to get hyped up like that. I'm like, because I'm not worried about him. Wow. Like, there's something about that where I'm like, I'm not afraid of that guy. Like, so many people break from that alone. Like, dude, look at him. I'm like, I don't care about him. Like, I know I don't look like him, but I'm in pretty good. He's not going to be able to hurt me. I believe in jiu-jitsu that much.
Wow.
And thankfully, I wasn't being lied to. Pedro was teaching me. When I met Professor, he was like, it was all about like not getting hit, and even just normal grappling. And the way I would see it was like, if you can defend somebody from grabbing your collar or your neck or your throat or behind your head, then that's the same distance of a punch. And even though I learned 99% of it from Pedro, I was in these like hairy situations in training, and I was cross-training with a lot of different people to get ready because, I had to travel to train with Pedro. I was going to Utah. I had to switch my travel from Arizona to Utah. So now I was going to Utah a lot, and Pedro had this nice garage above his apartment above his garage. Sometimes I stayed in the gym. Sometimes I stayed with other friends. Sometimes I'd get a hotel for a few days and then move in with somebody. But that became the place because that was where Pedro's like top guys were, and the talent that came out of Utah was like, you know, I was just like had to get there. I wanted to be a part of that. And anyway, I just with fighting, I think it just overall it was my spiritual journey. You know, it was my like individual like battle with myself to like. Don't get me wrong, I was scared to death every time I fought. Like, I would sit in the back room and I'd think to myself, like, you can still walk. And then as soon as you get in the ring, you're like, can't leave now.
Oh,
now
yeah.
it will look really bad, you know? But I would think even mid-career, like in my prime, I spent like 10 years plus in the top 10. I think I was in the top 10 in two different weight classes, top 5 in 2 different weight classes. I fought for 2 world titles. I was like a really good second best guy in the world, you know. But I never made the number 1 spot. I never got a win in the UFC, which kind of is weird because I feel like I was really good and I felt like I had all the tools, but I just maybe it was one mistake in that round that got me in a bad spot. Judges didn't like, but most fights I come out, win or lose, thinking, no, I know what I'm all about, and I know that jiu-jitsu shined tonight, and I was okay with that, you know. But I don't know if that answers the question, but fighting was just how it was very hard for me to let go. You know, I retired 3 times officially, and I kept coming back, and then it got harder and harder because I come back with a year and a half, 2 years off, and you know, I was at my best when I was fighting 6, 7 times a year, 8 times a year. When I signed with the WEC, it was like, okay, you know, my manager said, you're going to have to remember you're only going to fight maximum 3 times a year. And I'm like, that's great. I'm ready to chill out. But then all I was ever doing all day is like, when am I going to fight? When am I going to fight? He's like, dude, I told you got to be patient. I'm like, man, I can't sit. You know, like there's stuff, life is passing me by. I got energy, I'm training, I'm ready, get me a fight. And sometimes that was like my what is it called, my blessing and my curse, because there's many times where I should have just taken the layup or taken the time off, and that was kind of when career wise, but maybe not experience wise. But it wasn't me, man. I was all in. I only wanted the best, and if I couldn't beat him, I couldn't beat him. And you know, I learned so much from failing in MMA that I feel I can give so much more to people now as a teacher, you know. And I started my school at 19 years old. I booked my first fight when I was 19, and then 2 months later, I went and fought it, and it was 8-man tournament all in one night. I had 3 fights, and I won all 3, and it was I wasn't even old enough to be in the bar.
Wow.
You know, but...
And just to the listeners that aren't aware of MMA fighters, how often they fight a year, usually it's once or twice a year the average MMA fighter will actually fight, especially at the pro level. He's talking about fighting 6 times each year. You know what I'm saying? That's a lot of fights, and it's constantly, when you're in fight mode, what it does is it really could just take a crazy toll on your body and mind because you're constantly thinking about that next fight and you're training. You have to keep weight. You got to do this. So for you to stay that consistent and do it that long of a career is incredible. And you guys also heard him say he did certain tournaments that where you fight 3 times in a night. And I know that's not even like legal in most states anymore, where you can't even do that. If not all the states, I just don't. There's no like tournaments where you can have 3 MMA fights in a row just because of health reasons, to be honest with you. Right. So I mean, just the credibility that comes with that, man. You're definitely blessed with that because you're able to share all these real experiences, not just your wins, which were mostly submissions, weren't they? But also the losses as well. And like you just said, you take those and you learn from them, and you're able to now share more knowledge. And I guarantee you went back to the lab after, how did I lose with that? And then you fixed it, right? Am I right about that? Like that's what made you probably so much greater over the years.
Yeah, my fighters, like I was full-time coach, and the whole time since day one I had to coach my guys, and I was a part of their camps, you know. So that was the other thing. My body never really got rest till the later years where I had to be smart and say, dude, I can't spar today. Like, I had a full-time headache, you know, like my head was ringing all day long, and sometimes to the point where like I'd be like, shut the lights off, you know, or I'd have to go in my office and cover my eyes, and it was getting to that point. But I had to be out there. I had like amazing, talented guys, and they were usually lighter guys because, you know, I didn't attract the heavyweights as much, even though I had some really good heavyweights and heavier fighters. I couldn't personally be their bodies.
Right.
It wasn't too beneficial for them. They needed bigger bodies. So, but I was always going to be a good gatekeeper a good pace car for the lighter weights. So it was one of those things where, like, not only was I fighting all those times, but I was cornering and coaching and a lot of times training when I was on the road. And my body just kind of, towards the end, was just like, man, if I don't get away from MMA, I'm going to end up crippling myself because I have really bad arthritis. I've had, you know, lots of like nagging little injuries and little surgeries, lots of hand problems. I had a guillotine on a guy, and he yanked it so bad in training that this finger like was over here, right?
Way.
And I have had horrible guillotines ever since because I had double hand surgeries. This one was already broken from something else, and they were a month apart. And I was in double splints, so I got away from guillotines for a long time, and I'm just now starting to like get back to them. But like ever since like those hand injuries, and I lost like a good year of my life where I felt like I can really squeeze those kind of chokes, and I was kind of fearful of tearing it because they barely got an anchor in on the ligament, and if it tore, maybe it wouldn't happen again. So I feel like some of my game was affected by it, that like I need to just lighten up. I got to quit trying to like put my body through this. It's messing with my my mind, my injury, my arthritis, all that kind of stuff. And health reasons is just mainly the reason I kind of bailed out when I was just about to turn 40. Is when I kind of stopped.
And to have longevity like Professor Sauer has and Grandmaster Helio, we have to like know when to turn off that switch a little bit, especially being MMA guys. The future of you're going to impact so many people coaching and like truly being still on the mat to be able to show things. And I think one of the things that burns people out is if you keep, like you said, you just keep going, all of a sudden you do get all these, you're listening to your body now. That's I think a big part of maturity in the sport of MMA, jiu-jitsu, is we start listening to our bodies for real so that we have that longevity on the mats. I know you want to be rolling till 93 like Grandmaster Helio was doing, right? We have a professor that's still on the mats teaching things at his age. We got to be the same way, and it's going to come from taking care of our bodies. And I definitely see you doing that now. Even though at the black belt test, you're still on the mats, you're still able to still go hard and still show your skills. You know what I'm saying? Which is awesome.
Yeah, I went hard last night. I got a couple guys going for it last night at my seminar. Like I try to roll with my seminars, and I roll with my students all the time. I roll every day, you know. But I'm not out to always prove myself. So, like back home, it's safer training, even though some guys still just trying to kill me. It's fine. They want that feather in their cap, and it makes them feel good if they tap me out or catch me. But like, I'm over it. I don't need to prove myself to people. If somebody thinks that they need to be able to have me tap them a bunch of times to learn something from me, then maybe they shouldn't be on the mat learning from me.
True.
So yeah, my goal with Pedro's association is to do anything I can to make sure that his legacy lives on, well beyond his years, and that myself and all of his other old school guys that, especially a lot of the guys from Utah and some of the main guys here, that we just do our part to make sure that his legacy is known and that his jiu-jitsu goes on. And like that's like a life goal of mine, just that's an ongoing thing. And it's not a financial thing. It's not anything other than just that's important. That has to happen, because if I don't do it and these other guys that are with me on it don't do it, nobody's going to do it.
So that's the next question I kind of want to end on today. Is the final question of the day is, what does the future hold with Professor Sauer Association and Jeff Curran? So first I want you to tell us what's coming up for those that are listening in with Professor Sauer Association. What's coming up? I know there's like I don't want to say transition, but professors stepping back a little bit and kind of giving the reins to people like yourself, right,
Yes.
who have been around much longer than a lot of other black belts in the association. What is happening right now in Professor Sauer's association in terms of that, like the reins being passed down a little bit?
Well, he's always going to be on the mat. You know, he's going to be at his camps and his Brazil camps. He's going to be doing, you know, select seminars throughout the year, visiting his headquarters in Herndon. You know, I think once a month he'll be there visiting and seeing the students at the headquarters, because that's ultimately still his school, even though he's living down in Savannah. But he, you know, we have to preserve him, and we have to kind of tell him, hey, professor, like, you got to slow down. Or, you know, he's had, I think, 13, 14 shoulder surgeries. One shoulder's finally feeling good, and now his hip and back are hurting. Like, it's always something. I mean, that's a lifetime of being on the mat. His time when he first got to America, he was in that proving mode. He was training with all the animals, and it's like they're just trying to kill him, and it was every different style, and he was fighting for respect, you know, like a lot of those guys were. And now that is coming back to haunt him, and now he's saying, take my advice. You don't have to prove yourself anymore. Jiu-jitsu's already proven itself. Train safe, train smart. You can still work hard, but learn jiu-jitsu, build up your body, and then, as he puts it, then you could put on the turbo. Like, don't just hit the gas out of the gate, get injured, burn yourself out, and then never be able to continue. But Peter's got a lot of daughters. He's got a stepson, Joe, but he's got only daughters, you know, as far as like blood goes. But he and they don't train jiu-jitsu anymore, right? So he doesn't have a son or a successor that's like by blood ready to take over. And I don't think it was, who said this. Someone said this at one of his camps a couple camps ago in one of our owners' meetings, and he said, you know, Professor, you may not have raised any sons, but you've raised a lot of men. And I think it's a team effort. Myself, all the black belts who are willing to collectively do what we have to do to keep the association alive, while he slows down. That's what we got to do. And I have no problem leading that movement if I'm the guy, but I also have no problem following other people if they want to step up. It's just that I've kind of stepped up, and I feel like I've got the mind for it. I know what kind of running my school for 26 years and, you know, seeing and being where I've at. I feel like I have the respect of a lot of the guys, and I know that, you know, a lot of the guys have tons to offer on the mat, and they're happy just being able to do that. So if I could help in some of the back end stuff with Andy and Clay and some of the other guys that are people that are behind the scenes helping out with the organization as a whole, then man, I'll do my part. You know, it's great for me. I get to get out and meet people, train, you know, make money on seminars, travel, and, you know, keep that part of like my lifestyle alive. You know, I always love traveling and training with new people. Even though it does get tough on you, you know, and having my family back home, I miss them. It's rough. And I miss my students too, you know, but they're in great hands every time I leave. So.
And they know you're out branching and growing the sport, growing the name.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? So they get it. No, Jeff, I really appreciate you, making the time to be on this show today, you know, sharing your experiences. You know, there's a lot of people listening in that might have not known all this about you. You know what I'm saying? So for you to share that, it hits hard with a lot of us that listen in that have been big fans over the years. And we do appreciate you just in the association, what you've done for the association, but also what you're, you know, doing now, stepping up even more to just help not just the name of Professor Sauer to flourish, but other gym owners, other people that are coming up in ranks. You're doing it the right way, making sure that people aren't getting their belts if they're not deserved. Let's be honest. We don't want the association being watered down. I just really respect that about you. And also you're a guy that will teach a lesson and grapple. You're not just this black belt that shows up, thinks they're cool. Like, you could be the total opposite of what you are. You could be like these other guys that show up, think they're like have this huge ego. I've done this, done that. I don't need to grapple with nobody. But you still, you know, you still have that humble, just life, man. And we noticed that in the association when we
sometimes I'm injured though, and I can't. And I feel guilty, and I'm like, man, these guys, I feel bad. But and like a tour I'm on now, I got to preserve myself a little bit every day.
Absolutely.
Because I want to not, like, if I got hurt last night, then I got to cancel the rest of my week. So, you know, when I got guys gunning for me, I'm just like, okay, I've been here before. Just safe, you know.
And you have such a busy lifestyle. I mean, cool. I want to say like a cool, busy lifestyle now. Like today, you're here on the show. You traveled here today to be on the show. From here, you go to a meeting to check out where the next big Professor Sauer seminar is going to be, right, for the association in like a hotel. Then from there, you actually test one of my students for their black belt who's been training 16 years. It's going to be real deep, real important. I appreciate you doing that as well. And then you're doing that at headquarters in Virginia. And then you're doing teaching seminars and classes tonight, am I right? That's just today, correct?
That's today.
And you got, our buddy Alex over here that's following you with camera and getting behind the scenes stuff of what is this going to be for your website? And real fast, give us your website and social media links, and then tell us about what's coming up with that.
Yeah, so I have during COVID, I started an online like training platform, jeffcurran.tv, and it was going to be where I hosted just free material for, at the time being, for people that were stuck in their house and not training. And, I felt like having some downtime was never going to get that kind of time to film. So I got through a whole bunch of material, put my fundamental classes up there, and made a free account for the year of 2020. Well, it's 2023, and we just monetized the site for the first time. We lost a lot of footage that I found. I also got remotivated to say, you know what, I'm going to start filming some stuff. Alex, he's a black belt from Gracie, Charlottesville.
Oh, yeah, he's awesome.
And he's a black belt in video editing, too, and photography. So it's
I've seen his stuff. He really is incredible.
Yeah, and he started filming my retreats. We got a documentary coming out from that. From last year's retreat that I do, bjjretreats.com is another thing that I run outside of my gym team, Curran. But jeffcurran.tv, for the month of May, I'm doing like a $9.95 a month for life if you don't cancel, or $95 a year subscription. And on my site, I'm going to have all these seminars that we're filming. I'm filming classes back home. I got my striking basics, my BJJ fundamentals. I'm going to start putting together curriculum, because I'm going to have to probably help organize some new updated curriculum for Pedro's Association as well. So I want to be able to create content for both Pedro Sauer's online and my online, and video series, seminars, camps, all of that. So it's live now, and it's going great, and people are enjoying it. And that's kind of my way to document my jiu-jitsu before maybe I get too more beat up and I can't really do it the right way. That was actually something Pedro Sauer said to me a long time. He said, man, start filming everything. And I didn't, and I wish I would have. He's like, you should film everything, because someday you're not going to move like this. You're not going to, do this or do that, or you're going to want those memories. So now I'm like filming as much content as I can, so we can get it up there and people can learn my rendition of jiu-jitsu. I think rendition is the right way, but my translation of all the jiu-jitsu I've learned from all the years, put out from my mouth, from my experience. And I think that people that don't get to train with me will get to enjoy it and maybe learn from it. And
And tell us the website one more time.
jeffcurran.tv. It's going to have live rolls. I got to figure out a good software to do narrated live rolls. So try to film a little bit of training back home. Try to film just different things, maybe some little mini documentaries. Alex and I were brainstorming some things that we just want to make the site fun to go to. And maybe you don't want to go there and study moves, but you want to watch something jiu-jitsu based. So you tune in and watch the BJJ retreat documentary that he filmed. That's about to go up there soon.
Nice.
It's like an hour long, and it tells more about my story, a little bit more about why I do the event. Get some testimonials from people and what jiu-jitsu does for them. It's a cool thing, and it's a good feel, and you kind of watch it and go, man, maybe I want to go train jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
So it's jeffcurran.tv.
Man, wouldn't the world be a better place if everybody trained in jiu-jitsu? I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
If everybody trained in jiu-jitsu, the world would be a good place, man. I just want to put that out there.
That's
so, Jeff,
for sure.
Thanks again for being on here, man. Next time you're in town, we'd love to have you back. I know you're traveling all over the states, if not all over different countries. But anytime you're in the area, we'd love to have you back on and talk more. I know there's so much more we can chat about.
That would be great. I'd love to get Pedro Sauer on here, too.
He's going to be here in June.
Good.
He's going to be in studio in June.
Maybe I'll be here when he's here.
That's planned. Yeah. We got 3 seats, as you know.
Yeah.
So maybe we can make that happen. But I know it's June 6th. He's going to be here at 3:30 on June 6th.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He's coming to do a seminar at Urbana, yeah.
So... guys, before we pray out, thank you, Jeff Curran, for being on today, guys. Look into his website, like you said, but just look into what he's done over the years with MMA and BJJ and what's to come. And then I just want to give a quick couple dates of things coming up. Number 1, July 2nd, we have the Damascus Mile. We've done 4 of them. It's a nonprofit event that we do through the K&K Foundation. It's our foundation. It's a 501(c)(3). It's going to benefit people in the community, as always, in our local community. And you show up and you run 1 mile. It's actually a really cool run. We close down Woodfield Road, and we run 1 mile, and we have hundreds of people show up every year. July 2nd, mark that down on your calendar. Other than that, every Saturday, 6 p.m. at the barn, we have prayer and worship. And other than that, Jeff, we're going to pray out and get to the rest of this day. That was a big day ahead.
I appreciate you, Kyle. Thanks for having me. And, guys, thanks for tuning in.
Lord God, just thank you for another awesome episode here with Jeff, and we just pray over him and the association and his school and the documentaries they're making and the filming and their health and their families back home. And we just thank you that they've made time here today to be in here in studio to share testimony. And we also just pray just for the families tuning in today, Lord God. We just pray over them and anything they're struggling with, Lord God, that they find peace in it. Any questions they need answers, that they find those answers, Lord God. And we just thank you for the show. Thank you for the people we have tuning in. Thank you for our sponsors. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, you guys, shout out to Doug of Lever Dreams, our producer. Thank you for making this show possible. California Tortilla and Tropical Smoothie Cafe of Mount Airy. Hit us up if you guys want some free food and shakes from there. We'll see you next time on The Sefcik Show.